Hello again. Welcome to um, blogs by Tim Conan. My blogs been a met at a blogger, and this is continuing the tale of the good brother. We're in chapter 4, and the if you remember the three wealthy young men that came looking for to harass some homeless person, and they'd found Ampelio, and now they're going to harass him and annoy him in some way. "Well, there, my fine beggarly friend," laughed one of the lads, approaching him, and holding aloft the gold coin for him to see. "If you can tell me a tale worthy enough, I shall give you this money. What say you, friend?" And Peleo eyed the lads shrewdly, and decided they had no intention of giving him anything but trouble. "I have no tale for the likes of you," he spat. This made the lads laugh all the more. "Surely for this gold piece you have something to say. Keep your gold. I have had more. There is nothing you can give me to balm my poor soul in any case," sighed Ampolio miserably. This answer gave the young men pause, and edging closer they gave Ampolio a second look. "How came you here, then? Aren't you a beggar, as all beggars are?" "I can only answer for myself. But as for me, well, I once kept the company of a king." The lads laughed at that answer, but something in Ampolio's manner rang true, and they asked out of genuine curiosity to hear his tale. And so he told them his story, from beginning to his present condition, just as you have read here. After he had finished, the two friends of the coin bearer urged him to hand over the coin, and afraid of losing face, the wealthy young man reluctantly pressed the gold into Ampolio's palm. With night falling and eyes everywhere, Empoleon knew he was now in danger, for no beggar ever received gold. He dragged himself into a dark alley, and finding a sturdy piece of wood to use as a crutch, made his way with great pain as far from there as his limited strength could manage. By the mid part of the night, and after much tortuously slow progress, he found himself in an altogether unfamiliar part of the city, and collapsed exhausted to the ground. When Ampolio awoke the next day, he discovered that he was in the market district, where all sorts of fine things were bought and sold. As he was pondering, let's see if I can get to the next page here. As he was pondering what he should do, he noticed a fine retinue bearing a curtain litters upon their shoulders, which stopped beside a rich merchant selling beautiful fabric. He was close enough to hear a little of what the lady inside the littera was saying, and when the jovial merchant made a humorous comment, she let out a laugh that he had not heard since he was a child. And Pulio was astonished, for there was only one laugh like that in all the world, the laugh of his sister. He thought he might leap for joy, if only he could. But soon enough his sister had made her purchase and moved on, leaving Ampolio to ponder what he should do next. As he considered his limited options, his hand passed over the pocket where he had hidden his gold coin, and a bold plan sprang into his mind. Having much experience as a merchant, and knowing the value of one thing versus another like few others, Ampolio reckoned he could take his coin to buy enough merchandise from the poorer districts of the city to sell at a better price in more wealthy areas, and indeed, strengthened by an almost supernatural resolve, he spent the next few months carrying out his plan until, by great effort and terrible suffering of pain as he made his way from one part of Alexandria to another, he had earned enough to open his own market stall. 2 years from that fateful day, Empolio was once again a wealthy man, and resolved to buy every fine fabric in the entire city, until his sister would have no choice but to send for him in order to purchase the silks and finely patterned cloth that she had such an eye for. And sure enough, it wasn't long before one of the many invitations he received to practice his commerce was from none other but the great and cruel lord to whom his sister was wed. Page. Chapter 5. After travelling through the desert and across the mountains, Ampolio and his caravan arrived at the towering castle in which his sister dwelt. Making his way with the help of a sturdy cane into the court of the great lord, he bowed low, yet never taking his eyes from those of the imposing figure of the castle's owner, who stood staring back balefully at him from across the room. "You seem to have monopolized the fabric trade in these parts, merchant," Ampolio nodded. "And business is good, my lord." His sister's husband snarled menacingly at his reply, and laid his hand on the hilt of his sword. But Ampolio paid him no attention, instead ordering his servants to begin carrying various rolls of fine fabric through to his sister's chambers. Then, nodding curtly to the armoured gargoyle that stood fuming at him, he followed them in. The apartments provided to his sister were opulent beyond compare, richly decorated on every point. It was clear that she was the queen of her husband's heart, but Ampolio felt he had to see her in her own personal realm to make sure she was truly happy. Rounding a turn, he saw that, sumptuously attired in the latest fashions and surrounded by a bevy of well-to-do ladies in waiting, her husband had even gone so far as to ensure she had only the best of companions. "My good lady," he began, "I hope you find my humble offering of merchandise to your liking." She nodded briefly at him through her veil, whilst pointing out this and that from his wares to her retinue, and finally, after much deliberation, selected the very choicest pieces for her own. "We thank you for your speedy arrival, merchant, and for travelling such a long way on such short notice." "You're most welcome, my lady, but my only wish is to ensure your most perfect satisfaction in every way." She looked keenly up at the strange answer, then gave her little tinkling laugh, "as I am sure is the case with all your worthy customers." Ampolio laughed too, the loud guffaw of his youth, for at last he was sure that his sister was safe and happy, and in that moment her sister was and in that moment meant for nothing more than to return to Alexandria and live out the rest of his days in peace. But his sister was not the only one with a unique laugh, and the moment he expressed his merriment, his sister saw through all his fine robes, broken figure, and long beard, to know that the once carefree brother of her youth, to know him as. But she refrained from showing anything but the smallest movement of surprise, for her husband had heard the laugh too, and had come to make sure nothing was amiss. For his part, Ampolio had frozen, and in fact all within the room stood still as statues, as if under the spell of some diabolical enchanter. Ampolio's eyes were fixed on those of his sister, she on his, while her husband glanced angrily from one to the other in confusion. Breaking the spell, Ampolio's sister waved her hand dismissively. She had to act fast to save her brother's life, for he was the only other soul alive who knew truly how she had become her husband's wife, and her husband would make all efforts to ensure that only they two, as man and wife, shared that secret. "Good merchant, it is late. You must hasten back to the city before night falls," she said at length. Ampolio recovered himself and nodded as he felt the tension drain from the apartment. "Indeed, my lady." He turned to the castle's lord, who was still unsure of what had passed here. "My lord, I bid you good day." Without looking back, he signalled for his servants to follow him out. But he was far from free yet, and after having by such a circuitous and tortuous route discharged his brotherly duties to both his siblings, now stood at the brink of the most certain of dooms. For barring the way out stood the castle's lord and a brutal-looking gang of henchmen. It was clear he would know the truth of things, and knowing that would mean the end for Ampolio. "Merchant," he grimaced, "where from here?" Ampolio swallowed, feeling the sweat burst forth upon his brow. I suppose I have achieved all that a man of my station might hope to in this land." The cruel master nodded. "Indeed." His face changed as he considered something new. Perhaps you should consider more distant shores. I know of a great land that would reward commerce such as that you could bring with with wealth beyond measure. And Pollio seized this offer of exile and looked up and took up the cause with gusto. I can and must follow this course, my lord, for wealth and advancement are the good merchant's founding creed. The great lord managed something of a smile, which in truth made him look all the more menacing. Then my homeland, deep within the mountain fastness of ancient Moldavia, awaits you. In a trice it was all arranged, documents signed, oaths taken, and escorts arranged. And before dawn the next day Empoleon found himself, his servants, and all his fabulous stock of fabrics on a ship, bound upon a one-way journey to a land so difficult to reach, it was certain to be a place from which he could never return. But in truth it suited him well, and as far as the records can show, he eventually found his way there, married well, had many fine children, and lived comfortably and happy all the rest of his days. The end. Oops.